What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to Salty Runback, here to be your weekly intake of North American Developmental League of Legends. We're back almost at episode 50, by the way, here at number 49, and we are finally ready for the CLOL Top 32 bracket. It's going to be starting here this upcoming weekend. If you haven't seen, we've been releasing some content over on our YouTube channel over the last couple of days. Shout out to Shibby, who's been doing some breakdowns of some of the teams that will be competing. Those will continue to roll out until the top 32. And we got some other news about CLOL that we're going to share in a little bit. But before we do that, let's get some of those pleasantries out of the way. My name is Grapes, joined alongside Hawk. Hawk, how are you doing today?
Grapes, I am doing all right. It's been a productive day. It has been quite a week since we last spoke to the fans, at least on Salty Runback. I'm sure you all, if you're watching this show, have seen the Twitters as of recent. Yeah, it's been a ride, my friend. It's been a ride.
Yeah, you said it right. You said it the best way possible, that it's been very busy over the last week, and basically since the last episode came out, it's just been a full roller coaster of emotions. And I think this is just the perfect way to kick off our headlines here, Hawk, because I think the first thing we have to do before we get started is just to say thank you to the entire community, the entire collegiate space. We found out at the end of last week that GGTech would not be running a official broadcast of the CLOL Championships until the grand finals. And in an effort to provide a little bit more coverage, Hawk and I started a fundraiser for the attempt to run that official broadcast, or at least a professional level broadcast, as a part of University Esports co-streaming program. And the amount of support that we've gotten has been incredible. We just passed our $10,000 mark, which basically secures broadcasting rights for the top 16 onwards. So we're going to be able to be streaming on Salty Runback platforms of all of the CLOL games from top 16 until the grand finals. And I mean, none of this would have been possible without any one of you. Seeing all the support from everybody, all the donations from fans, from coaches, from players, from their parents, it's just been amazing. And so we cannot thank you enough.
Yeah, it's truly been what a road. I mean, what a road it has been. We found out Friday morning, which we had an inkling of this co-streaming model and the lack of official stream when we recorded last week. We had our premonitions about us, but we found out for confirmation on Friday morning. It was around I think we had a meeting at like 9 or 10 a.m. Pacific. Announcement went up at 2. So we spent, basically, Grapes and I got out of that meeting. We spent the next 3 or 4 hours launching our plan of attack, and for how to get a stream going for CLOL that actually respected the people involved with it. And it has really been. It's been a really surreal last few days. I never really thought I'd be able to say in my entire life that I've raised $10,000 in 5 days. Like, what an unbelievable achievement that is. And we all, did that together. The whole community really rallied around this project. Every single person that retweeted the post, every single person that donated, every single person that commented on the situation. It all means so much, and it really has been incredible to see how much people value this in the similar way that we do. Grapes, I don't know about you. I literally went to bed Friday night. So on Friday night, we had already hit our first target, which was $6,300. We raised about $7,000 in 8 hours on day one. And we hit that target in 8 hours, right? And I literally went to bed like emotional on Friday night at how much the community reached out to us and said how valuable what we were doing is and how cool they think it is, etc. And it's been very cool. We've gotten some awesome brands involved. We've got Gen G. They're going to be, I said, hold on to your Baron buffs. They're going to be our Baron buff Grapes. We've already got Ole Miss as one of our collegiate sponsors. Any of the other 31 other collegiate teams playing in the tournament, reach out to us. We'd love to sell advertisement space for your university. It's been a crazy, crazy road, Grapes.
Yeah, as soon as we hit that goal, I was actually playing solo queue, I think, when that happened, and I got a message from shout out to Axeman in the league client, who messaged me saying yo, you hit the goal, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was shaking.
Friday was unbelievable.
And I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing that I've learned from this experience is that we have a monetizable audience here in
Yeah.
collegiate. Like there are people that want to be able to support the players, want to be able to support the space, and are willing to give money and contribute um, in different ways if it means that they are supporting a cause. And I think in a situation where Riot or GGTech or whoever was involved created more opportunities for that to happen, I think we'd be in a bit of a different spot. I mean, it came down to us basically like telling people like, hey, like we like need your help, and people were still able to donate. Say like there was a skin, like a collegiate skin, that if you ended up selling it or buying it, like all the money went to CLOL or something. I feel like a lot of people would actually end up supporting that way, representing your logos and things like that. Like so, there are ways for our community to give and support, and I hope that in the future this is not going to be a situation again, because trust me, next year if this is the still same case, like we're
Yeah.
not going to be running this fundraiser, we're not going to be doing this again. I can promise you that. Um, and we just want to make sure that we send this message that
Yeah.
we can make money, and this is something that can be marketable and something that I think can be the future of developmental League of Legends.
I mean, I think that's a really good point that you bring up. There was some conversation around like, oh, bailing out the big company, blah 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 blah. Like, guys, we're fixing the immediate issue, which is 2024 CLO, which deserves to be streamed, and the people streaming it deserve to be paid. And we are investing very directly in that, right? So I don't really adhere to those arguments. Like, I understand the philosophy for sure, but I just fundamentally disagree with some of those. But I mean, yeah, we're investing directly in the space, and I think not only that, Grapes, like what this has really showed me is if a 22 and a 23-year-old, a couple of 22 and 23-year-old dudes, one of whom is about to graduate college, one of whom graduated college about a year ago, can do this. Like, maybe like honestly, this has been the kind of thing where it's like, wow, maybe I'm capable of a lot more than I gave myself credit for, and it's been super cool, and so yeah, big companies take notes. If we can do it, you can definitely do it. Because I
Or
mean,
you can hire us to do it for you.
or you could hire us to do it for you, because
We'd be down for that too.
we crowdfunded this one, but I mean, like Grapes and I have been behind the scenes pitching ideas for how to monetize this thing that if we had a little bit more time would probably be a bit more effective, but here we are. Um
Yeah.
so yeah, it's what a road. If you are watching this and have not donated to GoFundMe, I will just like ask, if you are able, please do. If you are not able or you already have donated, that is 100% understandable. You do not need to give us your money. And I mean, just you being here and watching this and supporting us has meant the world, because I think at this point, Grapes, the way I feel is regardless of if we get top 32, which to be completely honest, it is looking unlikely. Um, this has been an incredible achievement for me personally. Just on a very personal level, this has felt like an incredible achievement. I'm sure you feel similarly. And um, any other money that we're going to leave the fundraiser open for the entire month of May. Anything else that comes in is going to go back to people in the space, whether it's, me and Grapes directly. None of our budgets, by the way, include us paying ourselves. So, that and as well as like other production staff and stuff that are going to be helping us out like here and there along the way, we can throw some more money too. So just because we hit our 10K goal, whether or not we hit 13.5, the money will always go to people that deserve it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And we probably will open up the possibility of streaming top 32 until probably tonight, as you are seeing
Yes.
this live. Even if we hit it like Friday night, that's like the day before competition. We'd have to like reach out to all these different people. It probably would not be very possible. So, one last opportunity, I guess, if you want to end up supporting, still definitely possible. Although we at the moment currently just have our eyes set on putting together the best show possible from top 16 onwards, and we are very
Yes.
excited to get into that. We are going to make sure that your contributions do not go to waste, and we put together a professional grade product as promised. And we're super excited to get into it. We've already started some of our planning talks, and make sure to stay tuned. Give us a follow over at twitch.tv/saltyrunbackpod if you want to watch some of those games. We'll have further announcements about where all the games will be broadcasted, where they'll all be streamed in the future. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, we really appreciate all your support. And we cannot wait to get to broadcast some CLOL. Speaking of, we can move on to our next headline here, where we're going to talk about CLOL a little bit. Although it was announced that the CLOL finals are only going to be top 2 in Boise, Idaho, it did open the floor for other interesting things to happen because of that. And so now, with an expanded schedule and expanded broadcast, things are going to look a little bit different. The first of which is that now all games past the round of 32, so round of 16 onwards, are all going to be best of 5s. And after round of 16 and going into the round of 8, it will all be double elimination. So after the first 2 rounds of CLOL, we'll set up a bracket that looks oddly similar to the NACL playoffs, and we know how exciting those actually can be. All things considered, all things aside, in terms of the in-person aspect, in terms of the broadcast aspect, this format specifically, Hawk, is this the most that we could have asked for?
Yeah, the format actually goes really hard. Double elimination top 8, I think, is perfect. You know, if you get into like double elim top 16, I think it gets kind of convoluted, probably too long, that kind of thing. But double elim top 8 is really spicy, especially when we've been talking about how there's like a top 5 all year with like a St. Clair and a Fisher kind of knocking around somewhere in the ether. So, I think for those reasons, it's going to be really, really cool to see, like who's able to come out on top in the double elim. You know, for example, UST and SLU don't necessarily have to cannibalize each other in Quad C because we have this double elim potential, which is a really big deal. Best of 5s in top 16 is cool. Honestly, I don't really have any further thoughts on that. I mean, obviously more games is better, so we'll take those.
Yeah, I'm really happy about the best of 5 aspect.
I think for top 8 in particular for the double elim, I'm really glad it's BO5 double elim.
Yeah, I mean, we were in a situation last year where even top 8 was a single elimination best of 3. So now it's double elimination best of 5. That just adds a lot more complexity, but also a little bit more consistency in terms of finding the best players, finding the best teams. And I'm very excited, especially for when we get there, because we've been talking about this top 5, top 6. There's some other contenders that have kind of snuck under the radar as well. I mean, we're going to get the best of the best playing against each other like twice as much as we would have gotten in a normal CLOL format, and so that is what I personally am super excited about. Double elimination, 32 team best of 5, probably a little bit overkill. It would also take like 3 months for the bracket to fully go through. So I think that it's a very nice balance actually, and I appreciate the best of 5 to be played to get into double elimination, so you're not, kind of basing all of this on like one best of 3 to get into that big fun bracket. Obviously, I would wish that a situation opened up where we could where like we could have more people at the LAN eventually. But if this double elimination thing is a thing moving forward, you could theoretically save some money in a way by just inviting the top 4, and then you have like the lower semifinals into like the winners finals, and then that creates kind of a fun dynamic with the teams involved that is not just a simple single elimination.
Yeah, you either do it like that, or I mean, even if you had the extra money, you could have like lower round 2, for example, be live as well. So that way you get, I think, 6 teams involved. Like, yeah, there's definitely ways to do it. And I agree with you. Like, there's a really obvious finals weekend formula that does once again give teams the top 4 to aspire to, and they're not going to feel as cheated by the bracket, right? Because making top, like, it's going to sound really weird, but making top 4 should be pretty easy for the teams that actually deserve to get there, because they're going to have 2 shots to do so, right? And so if we're saying that there's this top 5, like, okay, one of them misses, but if another team sneaks into the top 4, then somebody fumbled the bag, guys. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think it's going to be really, really exciting in that way. I really hope to see that in future years. Obviously, finals only in person this year, but yeah, I think the best of 5s, double elim, all that for top 8 is amazing. Top 16 being best of 5s, I think is nice, just because you can feasibly stream 8 best of 5s in 2 days. I think top 32 as best of 5s would be too much. It's just like it would have to take like more days. Otherwise, I mean, you would have like 5 streams for the weekend. It would be ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a good balance. And if you do still want to invite 32 teams and create a situation where there is like more than one loss that you're able to take. I think something like a groups format or like a World Cup format would work a little bit better.
Yeah.
And I know that I think in the agreement that GGTech had with Riot, the first year had to be up to Riot's determination in terms of what the bracket and what the tournament format actually look like. But next year things could change because GGTech has full creative control. And if Tim is still around at that time, because I know he's helping out at least for this part of the championships over at University Esports, like I know that guy's a smart guy. Like he'll be able to whip up some cool formats that I think probably work better for everyone involved. So I'm excited to see what happens in future years.
Same here.
All right. Well, that's enough about the format, I guess. We could start talking about the bracket that got announced on our own stream as well on Monday. We weren't able to actually announce that on our last episode, but we also, did do our reveal show. We were also both part of the selection committee that both voted in the last 11 teams that did not receive an automatic bid and seed the teams in those 1 through 8 seeds, or A through H, however you want to say it, which basically determine which teams play against each other in those opening rounds. The randomization of the seeds after we arranged them was not under our control, but we did end up selecting who was a 1 seed, who was a 2 seed, and so on and so forth, as well, again, as before mentioned, voting in those 11 teams. We can get into everything that could be considered controversial here, Hawk, but overall, do you think we did a good job?
Yeah, I would actually really say so. I think this selection committee did a better job than the amateur selection committee normally does for all the flamers out there.
Oh.
However, I think both committees usually do a good job. I'm going to be honest, I think the collegiate selection committee actually really got this one right. I mean, actually, maybe that was a hot take that we do better than the amateur selection committee, because I do have some, there are some teams that I would have liked to have seen, moved up or down one grouping, right? One seating. But other than that, I think all the right teams got in. The main thing with the 11 at-large bids was it basically boiled down to, in my head, you pick 2 of Ottawa, Colorado Boulder, and UIUC. There's an argument for Waterloo to be in there too. Pick 3 of the 4, right? And then leave one off. UIUC was the one left off. I had UIUC on my ballot, but I'm not mad that Colorado got in. I think it's fine. That's basically it. I think all the right teams got in, Grapes. And even though I would have maybe moved a couple of teams up or down one way or the other, which maybe we can talk about in a minute, I think at least for the teams that are actually playing in the tournament, it's who it should be.
Yeah, I think I think in terms of selections of the 11 teams, UIUC getting left off after being 4th in NECC and only losing games only losing matches to Fisher, Ole Miss, and Winthrop definitely feels
tough.
bad. But when you look at the grand scheme of things and the fact that they dropped a couple of games throughout the regular season, they lost a game to Ottawa in the quarterfinals, it just, I think their wins were not very impressive. Whereas we saw CU take a very competitive series against USC, which many people had as that kind of lock in as a selection team. And they were not even running their full roster. And I think at the end of the day, that combined with, Saligo being Saligo, and also the fact that they competed in the NACL OQs, not saying that they did very well, they went 1-4, but I do think
they did better than OC, who got seated way higher than them. So
yeah. So I mean, at the end of the day, I will say finishing in different, I think at the end of the day, for these voting teams, having people that do not just compete in your specific collegiate conference does help. Whether it's your whole team playing in NACLQs or NECC or other matches where you're able to match up against other opponents, or situations where you have a player that is in another league and comes back. I think that just helps people get a sense of a bit of a stronger base of where those teams are at. For instance, UIUC didn't play anything other than the NECC playoffs, I'm pretty sure. Whereas CU, they have Saligo, they have Heloisia, who have both played in previous competitions, and they also competed in the NACL OQs. I think that is probably a flaw in the system where conferences don't play against any other opponents within the CLOL schedule. I would actually hope that in the future we do see more inter-conference matchups that is facilitated by CLOL in the regular season and not just the responsibility of third-party organizers. And I think that could actually get us a bit of a better understanding of where the conferences are at instead of just claiming, oh, West is weak, oh, NECC 4 seed sucks, like MEC is bad,
Yeah.
and those arguments, you know.
It's hard for UIUC in particular because for me Ottawa was like the most obvious out of the four that I listed. I just know that they were like in I think the last one in after CU, right? So
Yeah.
but Ottawa to me was really obvious, but when you look at Waterloo, UIUC and CU in particular, all of their resumes were very garbage as far as who they had actually beat. It just kind of at that point came down to like strength of schedule and like how good you think the roster is, which are both, as you alluded to, Graves, really hard to actually compare cross conference because UIUC had the hardest strength of schedule, but also they had the least impressive roster and the least impressive like resume as far as wins are concerned, right? So it's like, yeah, they only lost to Winthrop, Ole Miss, and Fisher. They took a game off of Fisher. Hey, maybe this team's pretty good. But they also literally didn't beat anybody, and their roster is not that well known, right? And then CU was like a super easy strength of schedule, but well known roster, and competitive series. And then for Waterloo, somewhat well known roster and competitive series in a more competitive conference. They had like Waterloo was kind of like the middle of all the metrics, right? So it kind of, I think for a lot of people, that's what got them in. And then it just depended on whether or not you valued strength of schedule or name value between CU and UIUC. I took the strength of schedule, but I think like I can completely understand going the other way. Graves, just to briefly touch on as well unless you have any thoughts on that, like as far as the seating's concerned though. Mm-hmm. The one that is really interesting to me, I do think Purdue Northwest getting a 3 seed over OC, it matters a lot. And I don't know if I inherently like strongly disagree, but I probably would have had OC as a number 3 and Purdue as a number 4. And man, oh man, it makes a huge difference when you don't have to play Ole Miss in round 2.
Yeah. 3 versus 4 is such a big difference because of, as you mentioned, getting to avoid playing a potential pool 1 seed is very important, and it does actually mean a lot. It actually kind of it's like an opposite situation at the other end of the bracket where you low-key kind of want to be a 6 seed instead of a 5 seed.
Yeah, you do.
Because then you get to dodge them in that way instead. You get an easier, you might get a harder round 1 matchup, but a very much potentially easier round 2 matchup. So that's when things get a little hairy in that way. Another thing that I know people struggled with in terms of the selection process was which was the last team to get into Pool B, because after like the Big Five that we've continued to mention, Fisher and St. Clair, that makes 7, and then there was a lot of debate over who got that number 8 seed. It ended up being Northwood. I probably would have had it being Northwood until their series against ISU, where after they actually struggled against a team that has 2 supports, made me end up going with actually Western instead, because I thought that their team play actually overall looked good. But I personally would not have had Northwood in that spot. But it was tough because it didn't seem like there was like any right answer for who actually belonged there.
Yeah, I think Northwood's last 2 series in North really hurt their stock. I also didn't have Northwood in that spot. I had them pretty solidly as a 3 seed. I thought Weber, Western, or even UT Dallas had a stronger claim than they did. UT Dallas maybe not, but they were kind of like at least in the mix. I think Weber or Western deserved it. I put down Western as well. Northwood being there. Ultimately though, Grapes, I will say like it doesn't matter too much. In fact, Western and Northwood will probably play each other in the second round regardless.
Yeah. It does mean though you dodge, if you being a 2 seed means you guaranteed dodge St. Clair, Fisher, or UST or one of those guys. And I think in general that would be more impressive, right? Because if you're a 2 seed, you don't have to play against any of the other 2 seeds until you get to like top 4. And so if you're
so
the
good guys win
instead,
because Western got Northwood anyway, and it's fine.
Well, yeah. If you think of it that way, it ends up working.
Yeah. Because Weber has the misfortune of being against St. Clair, who Grapes, I think, outside of you, like we have them as a very strong 2 seed as well, and I think that honestly might be like the most exciting round of 16 series that we have is St. Clair Weber.
Yeah. My last one that I was personally a little, a little bit surprised about was seeing Converse left out of the or getting put into the bottom 8 instead of getting placed in as a 6 seed. I think that roster on paper is strong enough, and they've played enough games in like other conferences where I think personally I put them over Ottawa, and I put Ottawa in as a 7 seed and Converse in as a 6 seed, but that was where I also had a difference with the committee. Everything else I was very much aligned with, and so
Yeah,
I know you were a little lower on Converse than I was though.
Yeah, I think I ultimately ended up putting Converse in Group F, but yeah, I think Converse is fine where they are. If they beat Northwood, like they would have to beat a Northwood tier team in round 1, regardless of whether they were a 7 or a 6. So I think it's fine. If they beat Northwood, then good for them. Like that's fucking awesome,
Hey,
and they deserve it.
We'll get into it in our next headline, but low-key, like that, like I could see it maybe.
Okay, let's go on to the next headline because we're
here.
spending a lot of time anyway. Yeah. I mean,
And
I think
as
the
we
main
get
thing,
into-
the main takeaway is like committee. I think overall did a good job. So
Yeah, and speaking of, we're kind of easing our way towards this point anyway. But let's talk about some Cinderella teams that are not necessarily seeded all the way up there. But you look at the way the bracket is constructed, you look at what these teams could do, and you think to yourself, hey, this team actually could go on a bit of a run. You could think of it from two perspectives, either like, a 2 or a 3 seed that you think could get to like top 4, or like a 6 or 7 seed that maybe you get to top 8 or something like that. I'll let you be the judge, Hawk, of who you want to vouch for.
So, I mean, I'm just going to continue on the thought train that I was on before. I think the really obvious answer is Weber State. For the reason being, first of all, they're a 3 seed, which I think if they make top 8, if they make double elim, it would be considered like an upset, right? And not only that, nobody really knows how good this team is because they were so unimpressive in their regular season. They were like 4-3 or something. They were like
There was a crazy 4-way tie for making it in at the first seed. So I don't even think Weber State was the 1 seed in their group.
No, yeah, Weber like almost choked their way in the group stage, guys. And then they completely like shat on West Conference in the playoffs. Like it wasn't even close. They 12-0'd conference playoffs, which is an unbelievable feat to do for this school that has never been in the national championship before, with a bunch of players that have never been in the national championship before. Like, this is craziness what Weber has already done. And realistically, barring any craziness, they are a best of 5 against St. Clair away from making double elim. And I think this team could be very dangerous in double elim because, first of all, they'll get to play Winthrop. As we have seen, Winthrop is mortal. And then, even if they lose that game, they get to play someone like UT Dallas or Fisher. Again, like that is a team. Weber is not a team I would want to play in that lower round 1. And I think Weber has a very real chance of being a 3 seed that makes it into top 6 here, Grapes. It feels to me like St. Clair is their biggest hurdle to making it to that point. And I think it would be an incredible story if they pulled that off.
When I was watching the finals of both of those matchups, because a potential Weber versus St. Clair round of 16 would be actually East champion versus West champion in round 2, which is pretty crazy to think about. But I thought that both of those teams had really good team play, whether it was Zadox and Goku in the mid jungle for Weber State, or it was Bakery Boy combined with Rock Boom and Miracle for St. Clair. Like this team. Both of those teams played the map really well, and I would be very excited if that was a matchup in the round of 16 that we got to watch. So we got to talk to Crazy Legs, the Weber State coach, during our reveal show, and he seemed pretty confident. He said that we have a really good chance of winning, and hell, if this team is riding so much momentum, they have so much confidence built into themselves already. Why not them in a way? I will also say, Weber State, home college of Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard, throughout his entire career at Weber State, never made the national championship tournament. And so now Weber State, League of Legends, is going to be able to do it before him.
That's a basketball reference. Talking to Crazy Legs, that guy was so juiced up. What a great guy to talk to. Yeah, I'm rooting for this team shamelessly. I'm rooting for St. Clair as well. I think this, we actually talked about this a bit on the reveal show, Graves. This quad B feels like it's going to be extremely dangerous, whoever the two teams that get in double elim are. So whether it's St. Clair or Weber, they feel like the strongest of their respective seedings, like number 2 or number 3, right? So I would not want to play against either of these guys in in double elim at all.
Yeah. As for me, I'm going to first talk about the 6 seeds in all of the different columns. That is CU Boulder, Waterloo, USC, and Ottawa, who's actually playing Weber State. If you caught our CLOL study hall video with Shibi, where he went through all of these 4 teams, he brought up a good point, which is that each of them have like a very specific, very strong player who is either in the NACL or promoted into the NACL in this last year. You have Plux on Ottawa, you have Saligo on CU Boulder, you have Onat playing jungle on Waterloo, and you have Levitate for USC. And I think that experience could be enough, especially as a 6 seed, to put up a real good fight against these number 3 seeds. I think any of them actually do have a good chance of pulling off an upset. I'm actually very excited to potentially see those matchups in the round of 32. I'm almost even more interested in those than some of the 4-5s in this first round because of the potential upset threat, but also the potential to kind of crash and burn, which can happen if you are this kind of one-man army. I feel like in college basketball, like in the NCAA tournament specifically, we see sometimes these stories of the Cinderella runs, like behind like one guy who just decides to pop the hell off against like one of the best teams in the entire country. These are the teams that I could see that happening with.
Yeah, there's always that, like, white guy that plays for the number 14 seed that hits 10 3-pointers against Kentucky, right? Like, no, that's what I think these teams could go for. I'm definitely with you. I think these 6-3 matchups are super spicy for the first round, and it's where everyone should have their eyes drawn, particularly because, as you say, I really just think for as exciting as the 4-5 best of 3 should be, I don't see any of these teams beating the 1 seeds, so it's just like, it's tough, right? So I'm with you. I think
those 6 seeds could also win their next game and make it the double elim if they are riding that momentum, if they are able to pull off that upset.
Grapes, we're already running long, but I want you to put your money where your mouth is. Which 6 seed has the best chance of going on a run? I'm gonna say Colorado.
I will say,
and
USC.
I was a Colorado hater, but
I will actually say USC. And on that note, I actually want to talk about Converse real quick as well, because they're another team that like has a really, really strong bottom laner in Devin. They have a very solid team around him. Northwood looked pretty shaky against ISU. Like that could be another upset watch there. I would have really vouched for San Jose State if they were not playing UST. If they're playing against any of these other 2 seeds, I would have been on the San Jose State hype train because I think that team is legitimately very good.
I do think it's interesting that Converse feels like the strongest 7 seed and Northwood feels like the weakest 2 seed. So that definitely creates an interesting dynamic in that matchup. But
a lot of interesting first round matchups. But let's look a little bigger picture here as we wrap up our headlines here, Hawk. Out of all the teams that are here, each of the 32 has like a different expectation, right? Everyone like has a dream goal of like winning the championships, but some of these teams kind of know that goal might not be reached. At the end of the day, which team out of all the 32 has the most to lose if their expectations are not met?
I mean, the extremely obvious answer is Maryville. I don't think I really need to explain too much of why, but this team has, guys, not won CLOL in 5 years now.
That's crazy.
Maryville, the gold standard of collegiate, the first ones to promote in the NACL, the pioneers of the space, have not won their main tournament in 5 years. Maryville is on a crazy runner-up streak across like all of the leagues they've been in. They just came runner-up in NACL. They have been runner-up multiple CLOLs in a row, right? Like this team has come so close yet so far to winning a bunch of times, and now Shogo's not on UST anymore. UST is weaker than they ever have been. They just 3-0'd SLU. Winthrop is looking vulnerable, right? And while Ole Miss is surging, it's not the same team that UST was the last 2 years. Not only that, they have UG Spyrax. Like, this is their moment, and they have to seize it. I think it is unequivocally an upset if Maryville does not win the entire tournament.
Yeah, I know we've been talking about this Big 5, Big 4, Big 6, whatever you want to call it, but Maryville, they look so freaking strong, man. And like if they do not kind of go on this run, I think they are pretty much like super heavy favorites to make it to the finals, if not win the whole thing. And if you ask me right now, am I taking Maryville versus the field? I would honestly probably lean towards Maryville at this point because they look incredibly dominant. I mean, they just went to the NACL finals. SLU is probably like the second power ranked team. They got 3-0'd by them
got
very
dunked.
easily. It was not even like a competitive 3-0. It was the 3-0 where like Maryville was fucking around by game 3. So like it just seems like they are very much dominant. I've been talking to different people and they think that like it's possible for these other teams to kind of step up and match them, and I really hope that's the case. But I do agree with you, Hawk. Like Maryville, they've always been that team that everyone calls like the Kings of Collegiate, but at some point they got to claim that crown once again, and I think this is the year where they're primed to do it.
Yep, it definitely is Maryville. Just to throw a bone to one other team to put some pressure on from a narrative perspective. Winthrop, they've been on a skid. They've got to lock in and they've got to make top 4. I think if they make top 4, they can call their season a success. I don't think they need to make Boise. If they do, great, and I think they can. But they just, the way the bracket works out, they have to play either SLU, UST, or Ole Miss, whichever one drops into lower bracket from that side. You got to win that series and make top 4. I think that is enough for their season to be considered a success, Graves.
I kind of disagree with you there a little bit. I feel like Winthrop has had this expectation of like being a real CLOL contender this year. I mean, they won all of those off-season tournaments. They had such good momentum coming into
this was
season
before
with NACL
Surdy joined
qualifiers.
SLU though, and before Maryville went to an NACL finals.
No, I mean I agree, but I think this, if you ask anybody on that team, Coach Artemis included, or any of the staff involved as well, like Winthrop.
I mean, I think they have a lot to lose for sure. They're number 2.
Yeah.
I would agree with you, but
like they're gonna say to you, not making it all the way is going to be a failure for them, and so. Who knows what the roster ends up looking like going forward. I know that Denethor Mobility very much are looking for those NACL spots, as are anybody else on that roster. And so for the summer split, like whatever happens there, like that could end up actually meaning a lot.
Yeah.
And so I am very much looking forward to this Winthrop run. I hope they can put it together, because when they are at their A game, I think they are very, very good. And so if everyone is playing at their best, that is exactly where we want to be. Last quick note about who has a lot to lose before we move on to our part 2. Everyone in West. Man, we just voted in 5 West teams.
Yeah, that's so true.
After we continue to call them like the weakest region. If none of them make it out of the first round, like we're going to have a big problem. So we need at least one West team. Come on, guys. Weber, UCI, UCSD, CU, USC. Like, we voted you guys in for a reason. And we're going to look pretty stupid if they all just get knocked out again. But, like, who knows? It could happen.
Stay tuned for part 2. I got a couple hot takes. One of them, Graves, being that I think Weber have to be the ones to carry the torch. So, yeah. We'll see.
Bracketology time. We're going to fill out our entire brackets and show you who we think is going to take the CLOL crown. Stay tuned. The CLOL Championships are about to start, and with any college sport, there is a bracket to be filled out, and there is no exception here in League of Legends. We got our 32 teams, got our bracket finalized. The only thing left to do, Hawk, is fill it out. Try to figure out which one of us is going to have that perfect bracket, which one of us is going to predict the champion. And, you know, I'm pretty excited to do it. I know that in general, League of Legends is a little bit more stable compared to something like college basketball. Not only are there going to be a lot of best of 5s that there weren't in the past, but basketball is only best of 1 in that situation. And I feel like League of Legends in general, we don't see a ton of upsets in CLOL, and so I think a lot of the time see some pretty accurate brackets. So there's a world where one of us is actually just completely on the money.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's also half the teams. That helps a lot. And League of Legends, bit more of a team game, a little bit harder for that one guy that we talked about earlier to drop 10 3-pointers and actually win the game, right? It can happen, though. But as we all know from our solo queue, sometimes you just got 4 awards and there's nothing you can do about it. But in all seriousness, I mean, Grapes, my NCAA bracket was in the 98th percentile after the round of 64, and then it was horrendously downhill from there, and I finished in like the 30s. So I'm really hoping that this one goes better for me.
Yeah, what ends up happening with those things is that it doesn't actually matter what you pick in your first round as long as you have like all your final 4 intact by the end. And so I think it's going to be a little bit easier for us to figure that out as just the nature of this format and the nature of this collegiate space at the moment actually is. But let's take a look at the bracket right now. We're going to go round by round here just to make sure there's not a ton of spoilers. As you see, there's the bracket that we were talking about in our headlines. We have Winthrop, Ole Miss, St. Louis, and Maryville, all representing as those 1 seeds. And then, of course, the bracket fills out from there. We each went all the way down, including the double elimination portions. And I guess no better way to start off than just going through some. I guess. What do you want to do?
Yeah, so I mean, I think what we can do, Grapes, we're gonna kind of go side by side. So we'll do like left side round of 32, we'll show our stuff, then right side 16, 16, etc. Right, and then it gets into double elim. Grapes, I think the best thing to do. I know we talked about a lot of specific matchups in part 1. Just to maybe reiterate some of those, and then also look at anything else, any other teams or anything that we want to highlight. So we talked a bit about all the 6 seeds and how they all have potential to do something in this tournament. We talked about Weber State and St. Clair down there in the bottom left as being teams to watch. Northwood Converse and Western USC down in the bottom right. And that was most of what we went over, I think, in like the part 1 as being really interesting matchups. So Grapes, looking at the left side of the bracket first, are there any other matchups, teams, hot takes that you want to lay out before we reveal your picks?
Yep, hottest take, Wake Tech going all the way. Sorry, Maryville, getting upset.
Damn, dude, 1. Most to lose. They're out in a BO3.
The NJCAAE champions. Gonna take it all. Yeah. No,
Grapes,
unfortunately.
This is really funny. When we did the reveal show, you were practicing saying NJCAAE or whatever, and you said NJCAEE, and I didn't want to tell you.
There's so many vowels at the end. No,
I know, man. But it was just fun. You were like saying it to yourself like before we went live, and then it happened. I'm like, oh no.
All jokes aside, all hearts to Wake Tech. They got a nice 3-0 win over DuPage in their conference championships, but they're
last year that would have been St. Clair.
They're Diamond Elo average, and I think that is probably the lowest out of any of these 32 teams. And they're up against Maryville, so if any matchup is a lock, it is going to be that one. I will say on this podcast right now, if Wake Tech takes a singular game against Maryville, I will eat a sock. I'll do something like that live on screen.
Someone clip it. Someone clip and ship it. Clip and ship it. If you're on Wake Tech, I want you to add us on Twitter for this when you guys inevitably win.
Shout out to Jerry. The first round matchup is going to be Scary Jerry versus Jerry in the bottom lane. Wake Tech's bot lane is Jerry.
Oh my god, it's Jerry versus a scarier version of himself.
Yeah.
That's tough.
All jokes aside, on the left side, there are some interesting matchups, although I do think the right is a little bit more exciting. Harrisburg UCI is a very interesting one. Both of these teams have a lot to prove as well, as they both disappointed pretty heavily last time around in the CLOL bracket. UCI, of course, getting knocked out in round 1. Harrisburg, I think, having a very uneventful route to round of 16. But HU was on such a hot start until they ended up faltering a little bit towards the back half of the split. And then UC Irvine, I mean, they got off to a hotter start than anyone. They were a top 6 qualifier team in that first qualifier for about 2 weeks.
How the mighty
and then everything kind of fell apart for them, as it kind of always does. But that is an interesting matchup. That's probably the most interesting matchup in that first quadrant. And then, of course, you have ISU Grandview towards the bottom as well. This was a rematch of the 2-1 series that ISU took last year, which was probably the most exciting round in that game, in that round of 32. I will say things look a little bit different now just because ISU's bottom lane not in the same situation as it was before.
Yeah, ISU, honestly, ISU Grandview, I think, and HU UCI are kind of interesting for the wrong reasons, Grapes, where all 4 of these teams are seated where they are because they probably should have been higher, but then they like choked. Or in ISU's case, they lost their AD carry. Not really their fault, but you know. But like Hugh and UCI like have fallen off really hard. Honestly, it's hard to say how much UCI has fallen off just because again we don't really know how good Weber is. And then like Grandview, they've been dropping some games recently. I
mean, UCI did beat USC. It was a 5-game back and forth banger, but they did end up winning. So they did end on a high note. They're third in the West.
Yeah, UCI outside of the Weber series has been kind of doing what they've always done. So yeah, it's a lot of teams that have been like kind of stumbling recently, and now they're all playing each other in the first round. And I think it could really be like a big deal for these schools if they're able to go up against the 1 seeds. And I mean, because the thing about these teams, Grapes, is like, UCI, Harrisburg, ISU, Grandview, like they all could take a game in a best of 5 or 2 off of these Titans. Like I don't think they're completely bad. So yeah, I think these are gonna be interesting ones for sure.
All right, well, let's do it. Let's
Yeah,
unveil
let's
at least the
unveil.
left half of that first matchup right now. I guess my bracket's up first, so we can just start there. Let's take a look right about. Oh, we
Oh,
faded to black.
okay,
There we
okay. I
go.
don't know what just happened. Oh, I clicked the wrong transition. Good
There we
producing,
go.
Hawk.
Okay. I went pretty chalk in this first round. The only upset that I have is Grandview over ISU. As I mentioned before, just not having disconnector play is going to be a little bit tough for this Illinois State team. And although I will say that they have started to learn how to play as this five-man unit, and I am very excited for the creativity they're able to pull out. I'm very excited for Grandview. I've always been an MEC apologist. I think Nightstar is very good and probably in one of the better 80 carries in this entire tournament. And playing against, two supports in the bottom lane, that actually I think is a lane that they can exploit. Everything else kind of remaining the same. I thought about UCI taking down Harrisburg for a bit, and then I remember that UCI always disappoints us, unfortunately, so we have to go with HU. I would love for them to be wrong, though, because, man, it's Cinna, it's Gorica, it's Light Pulse, it's Cerulean now, it's Mike Young. I mean, that should be a fun roster, but I got to go with Harrisburg just so I'm not disappointed again.
Graves, our brackets are looking shockingly similar, but get your Clippers ready, chat, because this one is the most content pick of them all. I've got Ball State over Fisher, baby!
No!
Fisher's gonna go down, them and they're not scrimming all that bullshit. Ball
Round
State,
what?
they're gonna rise up. Those ballers are gonna ball all over them. I don't know. For real, from my understanding and from what I've seen, this Ball State team is not actually that bad. And Fisher is a little bit fraudulent. Do I think Fisher actually loses this series? No, but when you pick a March Madness bracket, you got to do you got to take a flyer on somebody,
gotta pick
right?
one of them. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm going with Ball State. Fisher out in the first round. Part of the reason I'm doing this as well, Grapes, not to spoil anything, but I would have had UT Dallas over Fisher anyway. As another hot take or whatever. So I was like, well, why not just full send for the content? I feel similarly about the GVU ISU matchup. I'm actually kind of surprised we're in agreement on this. I think ISU is actually pretty strong, and honestly, I might favor ISU in this matchup, but I think I don't know. I just kind of felt like picking GVU. Yeah,
Nightstar's him, bro. He's him.
I do think Nightstar is quite good. I think I think this will be a very good matchup. I think on paper, this is the most competitive round one matchup in the entire bracket.
I'm so excited.
Yeah. And then similarly to you, I was like, do I pick UCI? And then I'm like, no, they'll make me sad. So I picked Harrisburg.
Yeah. All right. Well, pretty much online except for the Fisher thing. I will say once again, as I mentioned in the headlines, if it was Converse or San Jose State playing against Fisher, I would have strongly considered it. I do think that Ball State is not as strong as even they were last year when they lost the ESC finals. Blaster was somebody on that team that got a lot of attention, and he's not on the roster anymore for this split. And so they don't have a ton of people that really stick out to me as being able to be a big difference maker. And at the end of the day, this is still a Fisher team with Keel on the team, with Bob Jenkins and with Poom. You're betting against Keel in the first round right now against Ball State, who lost, in my opinion, one of their best players from the year before. So
this is just the comeuppance for the Bay State Mickey Mouse bracket in 2022. They're gonna lose to Ball State in the first round.
God.
Okay.
All right. Bay State to Ball State.
It's completely this is. Again, this is purely for content. You have to do one. I can't pick just chalk. Yeah.
Let's go to the right side right now. We talked about some of these matchups. Again, I do like Evan Lai and Went Rumble over on San Jose State a lot. I'm really sad they're playing as UST because I really would have picked them against some of these other teams, man, in the first round. But what sticks out to you on this right side?
I think the main thing is that PNW Waterloo is probably the most exciting 3 versus 6 seed matchup other than UT Dallas against Colorado. I think those are the two most spicy ones. The problem is, and the reason why maybe we didn't talk about it in our fourth question in the headlines, Graves, was that you have to play UST. However, I do think PNW has looked pretty vulnerable with their play. I do think Winking is quite good. I think their bot lane is pretty strong. They have Klexo Doubtful. This is a really solid team from top to bottom, and they definitely should be able to win. But I do think this will be a really spicy matchup. OC Bethany, I think, is a great one. Again, Boston University against UCSD is like the two most fraudulent teams in the tournament playing against each other. Like it's they were both these teams are seeded 4 and 5 respectively because they had to be seeded higher like than the other teams in their conference that are probably about the same skill as them, aka Waterloo, UCI, USC, etc.
Yeah, I think either of them have like upside, but again, playing against them in the second round is tough. Um, UCSD, I mean, they
I
they
think
beat
these teams
UCI,
are quite
so
fraudulent.
I mean, sorry, they beat USC in a 5-game series. Like that was an exciting matchup there. And Western USC, we pointed it out in our reveal show, but just watching Lynx and Levitate play each other in another like 5-game series. The crazy thing about all this, I don't know if we got a matchup of Team Fish Taco versus Blue Water throughout the entire split because Taco just really underperformed. And so seeing a world where we could finally see, in my opinion, two of the better ADCs that were in qualifiers this split play against each other in rosters that really revolve around them. I do think Western's mid laner, Mira, I believe his name is also very good. But the main characters at the bot laners, that is a very exciting matchup for me there.
Yeah. I think it's going to be, I definitely agree. I think that one will be spicy. Grapes, I'm going to go ahead and unveil my picks, talk about it a little bit more
Let's
because for as exciting as I think a lot of these matchups are going to be, I pretty much just picked chalk from top to bottom with the one exception being I do have Boston over UCSD. I actually like really don't believe in UCSD. Grapes, I know oh, sorry, I didn't. Okay, there we go. I said it in the headlines. I think Weber has to carry the torch for West. I really don't think anybody else has the sauce. Maybe UCI. They've got probably the next best chance, but I don't actually think UCSD is very good. I do think Boston should be able to put up a good fight against them, and maybe take that one. As far as that Western USC matchup, Graves, I'm intrigued that you're so excited about this one because I do think it'll be an interesting matchup, but I do think this is just unfortunately maybe the worst stylistic first round draw for USC because USC is a team that plays through their jungler and their bot lane, and Western is a team that plays through their jungler and their bot lane, and their jungler and their bot lane are probably just a little bit better in each like of their respective roles. And that's not to say that Levitate and Demon aren't great. They're very, very good players, but it's Lynx and Krakadan, right? So I do just hold those players in slightly higher regard, which is why I just worry that like, even though I think this USC team is actually pretty exciting, I wonder if they'll actually be able to overcome Western just given the matchup.
I think I agree with you as well. In that sense where Western probably does have the edge. If you go over to my bracket right now, I do have them winning. But I think stylistically, just like how that matchup could work is going to be pretty fun. Everything else alongside you is pretty even.
You got Waterloo.
But I do have Waterloo going over PNW. I've been big on this team. They have a core of like Kalimkoi and I think Inexhaustive that have been playing together for 3 or 4 years at this point. I remember casting like some of those guys when I was a freshman at university, and now I'm graduating, so I assume the same thing is kind of happening for them. They've been around for a while, and they have Onat. And this team, I think, plays very, very well together as 5. And I think their bottom lane is actually really good. I think that Zenden and Kalimkoi, their bot laner, and Zenden playing support. Like I think he's a legitimate threat down there. And even though PNW also has a very solid ADC in Winking, I think that matchup actually works out for Waterloo in a way. And having Ona as like a facilitating jungler to get the bot lane a little bit more ahead. It's a formula that I think works well against this Purdue Northwest team. And even though I'm a big fan of Prank, big fan of Doubtful and Klex, I'm a big fan of this whole Purdue Northwest roster in general, I wanted to pick one of the 6-3 upsets, and I think this one, in my opinion, is probably the most likely.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I do think this is a likely upset. I think it is possible. You're a really big believer in Waterloo. I will say I am not sold on Waterloo at all. And I do think PNW is quite solid, but it is possible. I mean, really, the main problem is, again, as I said, like they just have to play UST in the next round regardless of who wins this matchup. But
yeah, I was a Waterloo apologist last year as well.
That did not work out.
I had them going all the way to top 4, which didn't end up happening. They lost in top 8, but it was close. Yeah. But a little bit of a different roster this year. I guess not as strong because Onet's not playing mid, but I do think that they have upset potential, and I actually am very excited to watch that best of 3.
last thought I have before we go on to top 16 grapes is, we talk about how West, like, they gotta not all bomb out in the first round, right? Similar story, I think, to East, because we all forget that they got nobody to top 8 last year after having like 6 teams that were all like highly seeded in that tournament. That was a huge bag fumble by East, and I definitely think they want to avoid replicating that. St. Clair Western, they're definitely going to have to try to carry the torch here, but I mean, like, yeah, schools like Waterloo picking up wins in the first round, BU, that would be a big deal, I think, for the conference. I think you have every East team winning their first round match. Am I mistaken on that?
I just realized that I have all the East teams.
I have all but Waterloo. I mean, I picked all the same other matchups as you, Grapes. So yeah, that like clearly we're believing in the conference a little bit more this year. I don't know if it's the matchups or what or the players. I mean, I do think the consensus though is that East is a little bit stronger this year than it was last year.
Yeah, I think having like teams like Western look better. Team like Western got upset by UCSD round 1 last year, I believe, and so
yeah,
that was tough. They didn't have Lynx playing bottom lanes like the last game. Like, what are we doing, man? That was very unfortunate. And I think overall, like St. Clair looked really good. St. Clair made it all the way to top 8 last year as well, but they were in a different conference. Now they are in East, and I think that has bolstered the region a little bit as a whole.
Yeah. All right, Grapes, top 8. Show it to me. Left side.
I overall picked generally pretty chalk. I've down on the bottom, Winthrop and St. Clair both moving on. I know the Weber State game was a bit of an interesting one in terms of, like you mentioned in the headlines, could be an upset potential, but I really like St. Clair, and I think that they'll have a pretty easy path to top 8, despite how good I think Weber is playing. But I did have the Fisher upset. I had UT Dallas winning. Taking 2 games against UST is certainly a feat, no matter what the circumstances were. You could argue, like, hey, like, we're playing without Nova. They weren't really trying. But I do think that still holds value for UT Dallas. Someone like Definitely able to carry. I really think the whole map played pretty well, but specifically their top laner as well was somebody who I thought was pretty good and could potentially match up decently against Jenkins. And so I got UT Dallas moving on to our top 8, making double elim.
Hell yeah. Grapes, ironically enough, we're coming to the exact same conclusion right here with our brackets. Right. I've got the exact same 4 teams. Bit of a different road. Unfortunately, I do not have the Ballers making it into the double elim. How crazy would that be?
I mean, if you were gonna take him there, like, you could have maybe just full sent it.
I could have just full sent it. Ball State all the way.
Yeah, out of all the 7 seeds, I think they're probably one of the ones that maybe not top 8 bound, but.
I mean, yeah, I think the only one that even really has a chance is Converse, and I mean, maybe there's a world where Converse makes it, but
if you in the bracket picked Converse to win their first round, like, I think you pick Converse to win the second round too. At that point, right? You beat Northwood, you're gonna.
I don't know. I think Western is significantly better than Northwood, to be honest with you. But
yeah, that's fair. If we were counting games, I'd probably take Converse 1 game there. But I digress.
Dude, that is funny. I want to go off on this tangent for a second. I do love there is the mental gymnastics of, like, you do an NCAA bracket, right? You pick the 8 seed to upset the 1 seed, and then in the next round you have them playing like the 4 seed or whatever. And it's like, well, if I think they can beat the 1 seed, clearly, you gotta
keep coping until you get there.
Yeah. But that's not really how it works, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, I think the main story, I also have St. Clair. I think this one, again, this is like the top 16 matchup to watch. I think both St. Clair and Weber are going to be very dangerous. I'm with you. I like St. Clair, but I do not think Weber should be slept in, and I do think this is one that we could go either way with in the end. But should I hop over to the other side?
Yeah, let's see the right side. What do you got?
All right, Grapes. Well, I've got... Hey, all chalk. Look at that. I mean, I guess technically not. I guess Western over Northwood is technically not chalk, but the way we've been talking, I mean, we both, I think, like Western better than Northwood. SLU UST is pretty obvious. That's like the 1-2 punch out of hell. And then I do not think Ole Miss falls to OC.
Yeah, I think OC is good, but I think Ole Miss is really hot right now, and I would not kind of take them against any of the 4 seeds. I think
nobody wants to play Ole Miss right now.
Colin mentioned while we were on the interview, like, if we drop a game to top 8, like, like something really terrible happened basically, and so I'm gonna take his word for it. I picked Ole Miss as well, and at the end of the day, Hawk, we have the exact same top 8, I believe,
Oh
which
wow.
isn't super surprising. Western is a team
Yep,
that
look
I
at
want to
that.
talk about just for a bit because, I think Northwood's a very solid team. I thought that they actually played decently in some of their games against SLU, and then some of the games like really did not look good. But this Western team kind of came out of nowhere. Like when you look at all the power rankings that we did with the committee, with our like power rankings group, Western was not on any of our lists until like or maybe ever, honestly. And I think a
I don't
lot of
think they
that
ever
comes
were.
down
Yeah.
to that they didn't do very well last year, and nobody saw any tape of them, and nobody knew what their roster actually looked like. But once we finally got to see some tape, like this team is pretty goddamn good. Not only is Lynx and Crackodon here, they have Loyal and Calculus, who were both alongside Lynx on that top 8 team that Western, made it to land with just 2 years ago in 2022. And watching the tape, their new mid laner Mira is really, really solid. He is a like 1,000, 1,200 LP mid laner right now, in top 50 of solo queue. Good enough to kick Loyal out of the mid lane role and send him down to support. And so I thought that this guy played really well, even especially in that game in the series that they had against St. Clair. And I'm very excited for this Western team, man.
Yeah.
I think they can make it back to top 8. And even though Lynx versus Enthrall should be a fun bot lane matchup, if Western's beating USC's bot lane, I think they're going to beat Northwood's bot lane too.
Yeah, I think Western is really hype as well. I don't care how good Northwood is. I think Western is quite strong. Um, I mean, man, how does Western always keep being that good? They're a club team, by the way. Like, what an achievement it is for them year after year. They have been to top 4 in years past. As you said, they were in top 8 2 years ago. Like Western, gotta look out for that school. Yeah, this is a team that I would not want to fuck with. And Grapes, as you say, we have the exact same top 8 at the end of it all. However,
Yeah.
I have to imagine that our maybe roads after this are slightly differing from one another. Grapes, I'm first going to unveil what you have as the winners of the first
Okay.
round of the double elim, going
All right,
to
here we
upper
go.
semis.
We got Maryville, pretty solid. Ole Miss beating Western, pretty solid.
Whoa!
And then here we go. This is when the upsets start to happen. I think now that we're in the top 8, like all these teams can beat each other, and I have St. Clair beating Winthrop University in this upper quarterfinal matchup. Now you might be saying that's crazy, Grapes. Like Winthrop, super good team. St. Clair, but I'm really impressed by the way that St. Clair's playing the map. I think that their team play is really solid. The ability for Maddie to like get Rock Boom ahead, and then having Bakery Boy kind of participate in that as well. Ricky being a very solid top laner that I think is not going to break against Denethor. Denethor is going to win that matchup, obviously, but I think that Ricky's going to be able to stand solid enough that Rock Boom versus Mobility, I mean, that's going to be a matchup that I'm super excited to watch, but I think St. Clair has a bit of an edge. Their bot lane has been playing super well. Their team looks super coordinated. And hey, I know that their director was complaining like why are we not a top 4 team? This is their chance to do it, and I think that they're going to establish themselves here with that win.
I mean, I know this is what we've talked about. Like Winthrop is not immortal against St. Clair whatsoever. I do still have Winthrop winning. I have the big 4. Except, wait, do we both have UST?
I have UST as well over
Okay.
SLU.
Wow. So we we both take UST over SLU. I mean, I do think the consensus on that is that UST is gonna ramp into the tournament because they've never really had their full roster, and this team with Array should be very, very, very strong, and they do have 2 back-to-back champions on the team. I think UST versus SLU is a very obviously hype matchup. Both these teams gunning for Boise. Man, Winthrop over St. Clair though is.
Hey.
I mean, I am choosing to believe that Winthrop hit a wall at the end of the qualifier split. They weren't able to overcome it, and now they are. Yeah, and that kind of carried into the NACC finals, right? And now they've had a couple weeks to reset, refocus, come into the college championship. They'll get to knock off Campbellsville and GVU, no problem. And I think when it comes time, they'll be geared up and ready to go against St. Clair.
That's a fair take, and I honestly do really still believe in all these Winthrop players and this team as a whole. I do have them. Spoiler maybe just winning. I have them not getting knocked out in this top 8. Like they're gonna make a bit of a
Well, let's
lowers
look
run.
at it.
That's gonna happen a little bit more. Yeah. So I guess what are we looking at now? Just like the entire next 2 stages then?
Yeah, so we're going now.
Okay.
We're gonna see the top 6. So it's gonna be lower bracket round 1 and 2.
All right.
We're gonna
So
see. Oh wait. Oh, but we have to see who goes down to the lower. So yeah, I guess we'll look at upper. Wait. Yeah,
no,
we'll
no, no,
see.
we're good. We're good here.
We'll see
'Cause
upper
we have all the
finals.
losers.
Yeah. Here you go.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Lower round 1 is all the losers, the people who did not make upper semifinals here. So Winthrop's going to be down there with UT Dallas. Slu's going to be down there with Western. I think this is the point where we see those 2 teams that are kind of that tier below the other ones. You could maybe stick St. Clair there, but I obviously had them winning, so like that's not going to be something that happens. I'm going to have Winthrop and St. Louis moving on out of these groups here. And then in the upper semifinals, I have Maryville advancing, and I have UST beating Ole Miss. I'm very excited for this UST roster. I will say, like, the SLU matchup, top lane becomes an area of concern for me a little bit. I think Porsche's solid, but it's going to be Surdy that you're going to have to play against, and if that matchup is exploited hard enough, like, we've seen Surdy 1v9 games against Northwood, like, that can definitely happen again against UST, even though I would argue UST is a little bit stronger. But at the end of the day, that's kind of where I'm at. I have a Maryville UST upper finals, and that is, I guess, kind of what would have happened if it was single elimination to be a rematch of the previous grand finals.
Interesting. Okay, I got a couple differences from you here, Graves. So, like you, I've got Maryville. I've got Ole Miss taking their side of the matchup. Like I said, I don't think anybody wants to play Ole Miss right now. This team is blazing hot, and for as good as a bottom lane as I think that Array and Trevor is, I think Shogo and Rhino is still the best. They might even be better than Jerry and Zyko, and Jerry and Zyko were both all pros in NACL. That is how good I think Shogo and Rhino are. I mean, Shogo is right now, I think I said this on the last ep, he is this year, he has a chance to prove himself as the greatest collegiate player of all time. I think if he gets Ole Miss to grand finals, there's a really, really strong argument to be made there. So yeah, and then so that sends UST then to the lower bracket. I've also got SLU down here against Winthrop, right? So I've got Winthrop falling down against Maryville. St. Clair overcoming UT Dallas, I think, is expected. So maybe my second round of the lower bracket here, Graves, a bit more chalk than yours, with the, like it's just St. Clair and SLU winning matchups they're expected to win. And then I think maybe the only spicy take is potentially Ole Miss beating UST.
I think it's definitely possible, and you bring up a good argument there with the bot lane. Like, Shogun Rhino, so freaking good all qualifiers long. It is going to be interesting to see like how they compare against quote unquote like NACL level talent. Like, even though Ole Miss played in the promotion tournament, like we didn't get to see Shogun Rhino against like some of the top tier bot lanes like Maryville specifically. And so that is going to be a matchup that I'm excited to see if that is the eventual upper finals. And so definitely a possibility. But I think at the end of the day, we both kind of agree that these are like the top like 5 or 6. These 6 teams are going to be in the top 6. So we ended up eventually whittling down to the top 8 and now to the top 6 with UT Dallas and Western both falling out.
Yep.
I think though in this next kind of unveiling, as I think we should go through the.
We should just go one by one.
Go to the lower
bracket.
semifinals here. Yeah. Okay. So Ole Miss versus Winthrop. For me, I have Ole Miss taking it because after they lose to UST, they're gonna be in that matchup against Winthrop, who went through that lower bracket, and that means that Winthrop in my bracket fall out in the 5th to 6th place match, which definitely a disappointment for them if that ends up being the case. But Ole Miss beat them pretty handily in the NACC Grand Finals, and I think the way that they've been playing right now, I would agree with you. Like, they are probably favored in this situation. And then I have SLU beating St. Clair. I think the St. Clair Miracle Run might end around here, even though I do think that they're still very good. While, Denethor versus Ricky, like, I think maybe Ricky can hold his own. It's still Surdy that we're talking about, and this guy really can 1v9 some games, man. And I think SLU plays well enough as a team because they've been playing together so long during NACL as wildcard that, like, the team play is not going to be as kind of matched up, maybe. And so I think I have St. Louis advancing here. Playing Ole Miss in the lower semis.
So we said, that if Winthrop makes top 4, they can probably still call their season something of a success, or at least an expectation, right? And so you have them going down in that.
It's tough
in that 5th,
you have to
match.
pick one of those. You have to pick one of those teams.
Winthrop has the hardest draw because no matter which direction they go, they have to beat one of the other Big 5 in an elimination match. They have to, no matter where they go, which is like, that's tough shit. You know what I mean? So it's spicy. Grapes, I do have them winning, but I have them beating SLU. I think Denethor can handle Surdy just fine, and I think this mid-jungle in particular of Winthrop will be able to shut down the Winnie Darkwing's machine mobility Chookies better in the 2v2 than Aaron and... I don't know if we're allowed to announce this. We can cut this. SkyTech.
I don't know. Whoever's playing down there.
Whoever's playing down there. We can cut it.
If you got this late in the episode, you could hear a leak. Whatever. They're going to be playing on Saturday. It's fine.
I think Winthrop's got it. I think they've got the stuff. I still believe in this team. I think they're going to be back better than ever. This team, you have to boom to rebuild again, and I think they'll rebuild and they'll come back even stronger. I think this team is pretty unconquerable when they are driven, right? So with that renewed drive, I think they can do it. And then Grapes, the real elephant in the room.
Yeah.
I have
what is that?
2 of the Big 5 falling. You're not coping enough for St. Clair, my friend. St. Clair to the top 4 with a win over University of St. Thomas.
I mean, I guess it's possible. I mean, if we're coping for Winthrop losing to St. Clair, like we could cope for UST losing to St. Clair as well. On the SLU Winthrop note, I do think that is actually a matchup that would benefit Winthrop a lot because it actually negates 2 of the best things that they have, which is their team play and then having Surdy. Like I think Denethor, as you said, probably matches up against Surdy all right. I would still favor Surdy, but maybe not by as much as some of the other top laners here. I think Denethor is very solidly the second best top laner in this tournament. Maybe Niles, but we'll see. And then on top of that, the team play for Winthrop is also going to be very good. I mean, they've been playing together as a team for a long time. Artemis really values macro as being like a very important thing for him. And so that's kind of where I'm at as well. I don't have that matchup happening, but if I did, I would definitely consider Winthrop.
All right. Well, Grapes, I'm going to treat you to a little bit more spice. Maybe not actually that much more spice, because then we move on to the round of 3. Who does Winthrop face after they take down St. Clair? Because, of course, the magic can't last forever. I still have Winthrop for the second time overcoming St. Clair in the tournament. Ole Miss falling to Maryville. It is the fated matchup just happening, 2 rounds later than you have at Grapes?
Yeah.
The in my opinion, best rivalry collegiate right now.
Hey, it's a higher stakes, lower bracket matchup than mine, so I mean that would be exciting nonetheless. And I assume we'll get into who wins that in a little bit, but we could look at what I have here as well. I have UST losing to Maryville in the upper finals, and I have SLU beating Ole Miss here. This was a tough one. I could see this going either way, honestly, but man, Surdy's probably just the best player in this whole tournament, so I kind of have to ride him a little bit here. And speaking of, as we can continue to move on to what our grand finals ends up looking like, I'm going to have SLU beating UST this time around after they lost to the UST in the upper quarterfinals. The way my headcanon's going here is that SLU's going to try to play their normal play style in this first round against UST, and they're going to lose because, the team play just maybe doesn't work out. UST ends up better on the day. And then in this lower final matchup, they realize, okay, we play her on top side, we win. And so Surdy 1v9s this series and sends St. Louis University into the grand finals for a crosstown rivalry matchup against Maryville.
What a story that would be. Grapes, I think it's so interesting that we have the opposite sides of the Big 5 making it into the top 3 there. You've got UST SLU. I've got Ole Miss Winthrop. And like I said, I believe in Winthrop.
Wow.
I think
Okay.
Winthrop takes down their rival yet again. I think they've got it. I mean, that's going to be a matchup for the ages if Ole Miss and Winthrop meet each other again with a ticket to Boise on the line. Could you imagine the shit talk between those two teams? Man, it would be so good. Winthrop takes it, but in the end, it's Maryville's game. As we said in the headlines, Maryville against the field. I'm taking Maryville.
Yeah. Do you think if SLU and Maryville both win, do they take the same plane to go to Boise together? Like maybe there's only one plane from St. Louis to Boise, Idaho, and they have to just take the same one, and then they're like just eyeing each other
Oh my God.
down the whole time. I know a lot of those guys are friends as well, so like I'm sure it would be chill. But I'm just imagining the scenario in my head. How funny would that be if like at the end of the day it's just these two teams flying to like the same place from the same place?
That'd be pretty funny.
But yeah, Maryville versus the field.
There's
again.
probably not that many flights from St. Louis to Boise, I would have to think. So
I think at the end of the day, it's cool how we both had the exact same top 8 because it does seem like it is a relatively simple path to get to those 8. You could argue a couple either way, Weber versus St. Clair, Fisher potentially making it all the way. I think if Fisher does actually end up turning on and not fumbling like we both end up predicting, like they are a very scary team in that lower half of the bracket as well. And
it is
maybe
funny.
Northwood goes on a run as well.
We both picked the UT Dallas upset. I do think Fisher actually is the highest likelihood to make top 8 out of that, like that bottom 4 of Quad A, right?
They have the highest ceiling, I would say for sure.
Like
out of those teams.
Yeah, I think they should make top 8. I think they're favored to make top 8. It just seemed like the upset to pick. You know what I mean, Grapes? Which is I think why we both had UT Dallas.
Yeah, sometimes you got to pick an upset. And
yeah, exactly.
We both ended up picking the same one. Still rooting for everyone over there. We have I was gonna say Keel, like friend of the show, but we have so many friends of the show. Like
we have a lot of friends of the show in this bracket. It's pretty hard to make them all happy, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Mobility, I've done this one for you. I've been hard on you the last couple weeks, though. I believe in you to make Boise, my friend. He's gonna be mad that I picked them to lose to Maryville, but
Well, that's gonna do it for our bracket episode. If you want to make your own bracket, we actually have a very fun project announced coming very soon. We're working with our good friend Mac Dewey. If you know him, he did a whole bracket coding challenge last year, and it was really fun. I got to participate in that one. Hawk, I think you ended up putting some votes in there as well.
Did too, yeah.
But we're doing this again. Mac made another bracket with the full double elimination and everything, and we're going to be working on it together a little bit. It's all his work, so make sure to give him a follow, but we're going to be promoting it on our platform. You can make sure to sign up and give that some love, and of course he'll be calculating all of the winners and who ends up being the most accurate. And I guess Hawk and I will both be submitting our brackets so you can see how good you do compared to us.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, check out the bracket challenge. I mean, it's just like NCAA, get all your friends in there. Let's see who does the best. You know what I mean? Winner gets $1 million. Not actually. Yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. Support the CLOL streams. Again, we already have streams locked in for top 16 and beyond. Sponsored by Salty Runback. But any funds would go a long way in helping enhance those streams, helping out Grapes and I personally, as well as also potentially allowing us to launch a top 32 stream. By the time this episode releases, there will be a few more hours to where we might be able to make that happen, raise the final 3,500. So please, if you have the means, consider doing so. Make sure to follow myself at Hawkcast, Grapes at Speedy Grapes, and Salty Runback at Salty Runback Pod on Twitter and all of our other social media platforms where we will be promoting everything about CLOL. Like, it is going to be all CLOL for like the next month for us. So
unless there's some like big roster announcement or something that happens, then we'll talk about it. Obviously.
Oh, we'll talk about it. But like
the biggest story is going to be CLOL for sure.
There's going to be a lot of if you want to keep up with CLOL, we're probably the best place to go. So I'd recommend making sure to keep up with us on social media. Again, last time I'll say check out the GoFundMe. If you're a university or a company and you want to advertise, like you saw what Ole Miss did and you're like, wait, shit, I don't want to be outdone by Collimer. Fucking buy some advertising space or take it with a grain of salt because we have a great month of games left for you. I've been Hawk. That's been Grapes. Have a great night.